Hi, my name is Trevor Klee. Welcome to my guide to the LSAT Reading Comprehension process. So my process is based around a simple idea. You'll never be tested on the entirety of the reading comprehension passage. So by what I mean by that is you're never going to be asked to write an essay on what you learned, right? Like you're never going to be asked to say like, oh, tie all the parts of this reading passage together. Instead, you get asked specific questions about specific parts of the passage. Those parts of the passage you need to know really well, and that's how you're going to score points. If you read anything other than those parts of the passage, you're wasting time and you're not scoring points. So, for pretty much anyone, but especially for people who struggle with timing on reading comprehension, I recommend just reading the parts of the passage that you need in order to score well. Now, of course, that's a lot easier said than done, given that they don't tell you in advance which parts to read. So then the trick of it becomes, how do I figure out which parts I need to read? And then once I do that, how do I interpret those in order to get the right answer? So that's pretty much the game of reading comprehension. What parts do I need to read? And then how do I interpret those parts to get the right answer? So here are my steps to the process. 4 steps. So, step 1, skim the passage. We just want a basic idea of what the passage is about and what it's organized. So it should really just be enough to get us something like, what's the main point of this passage? You know, what is going on? And one thing I'm always very focused on here is shift in points of view. So when I'm reading this passage, I really want to pay attention to who believes what. What does the author believe? What do the people mentioned believe? Are there any disagreements? Now, you can skim the passage in a couple ways, but the most important thing when you're skimming is always to focus on first sentence and last sentence. I'm always really focused on those of each paragraph. First sentence, last sentence. Now, if you're a really slow reader or if you get really lost during LSAT passages, I'd actually advise you to only read those. And that's what I'm going to be doing in this lesson here. I'm only going to be reading the first sentence and the last sentence. If you don't have such trouble with timing, you can read the rest, but still focus first sentence, last sentence. And why first sentence, last sentence? Well, because the primary purpose of a paragraph is always going to be in the first sentence or two. So then I just confirm it by reading the last sentence. So I get the first sentence, gets me a basic idea. Last sentence confirms what I thought and usually leads into the next paragraph. Okay, so once I've skimmed it, what next? Well, now I have enough to answer the main point. I understand the organization of the passage, but I may not understand, in details that are important. So I start going to the questions. For each question, I look at it for key terms. If there are any weird terms that I don't recognize, or names, or dates, or whatever, I go back to the passage and I read it. Hopefully, my idea of the organization of the passage will be enough to tell me where I need to look further. So this would be stuff like names, terms, or sometimes, they just ask you for honest line number, like line 9, All right, what's next? Next, I go to the passage. In the passage itself, I need to find and read the exact sentence or sentences required by the question. So I skim through, I find, okay, here's what they're asking about. Here's the sentence or sentences, and then I read that. If I need context, so if they're saying, why did they do it? What was the author's purpose? That sort of thing. It's either going to be the sentence before and then maybe after. That's for context. And then last, once I've read the passage, I go back through the question and I look through the answer choices. So I have to read the answer choices really carefully now, immediately crossing out any that seem incorrect, keeping any that seem like they could maybe be true, And if I'm not sure on something, then I can go back to the passage and see if I can find confirmation. Now, one question you might ask is, well, what happens if in step 2, there's no key terms in the question? Like which of these would the author be most likely to agree with? Well, then we just skip to step 4. If there's no key terms, I just skip to step 4 and I go through my answer choices, cross out any that seem incorrect, go back to the passage to search for any that seem like they might be correct. Another thing that's really important, by the way, about step 4 is always pick dumb answer. Now, what do I mean by dumb? I mean the one that's like correct, but it seems so obvious that it's no point. Like sometimes you'll read a science passage and there'll be a bunch of like intelligent seeming answers, and then there's one answer which is like, well, maybe if something were true, it could be in another universe this. And it's like, well, that's probably correct. If you say maybe, possibly, you're probably right. You're not saying anything intelligent, but you're probably right. And you're certainly much more right than if you say always or never or the only. So people sometimes point that out with strong language, which I think is important. But I think a good thing to say is it's often a dumb answer that you want to, so I won't say never strong. I'll say rarely strong. It's often a dumb answer. So when I work with my tutoring clients, they often are like, I saw that answer and I saw that it could be correct, but like, I didn't really get a sense of it in the passage. And I was like, well, if it seems like you can't prove it wrong, then it's the right answer. All right. So I'm going to put these steps to use in a sample passage. Before I do that, I just want to put a little plug for my own stuff. I have a whole reading comprehension book with a bunch of passages fully worked out, just like this, at gumroad.com/TrevorClee. $25. It's great. I'll teach you how I got a 175 on my own LSAT. Neato. All right. Just a little plug for myself there. But let's go into this example passage. Now, this is not a real passage from the LSAT. I've actually adapted a passage from Wikipedia. This isn't a real passage from the LSAT because the LSAT is really, really aggressive. And as anyone will tell you, if you put a real LSAT passage up on YouTube, LSAT will come to your house and beat you with sticks. Or more likely just send you a letter threatening a lawsuit. I'm not even kidding. So yeah, this is a passage from Wikipedia, and these are questions which I've adapted from other LSAT reading passages. But it still should be useful to go through, so let's do it. Now, here's my example passage. As you can probably see pretty much immediately, this is a science passage. This is a long science passage, not a paired passage. So let's go through it. So what's our step 1? Well, step 1 is skim. So let's skim enough to get the main point of the passage. So skimming, as I said, first sentence, last sentence. So I get the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, also known as the Cretaceous tertiary extinction, was a sudden mass extinction of 3/4 of plant and animal species life, approximately 6 million years ago. It's pretty straightforward. There's just one sentence. All right, cool. KT extinction event, mass extinction 6 million years ago. All right, that's the main idea of the first paragraph. What's the second paragraph? It was originally proposed in 1980 by a team of scientists led by Luis Alvarez and his son Walter. So, I got some people here. All right, it's the point of view. It is now generally thought, so this is both Luis Alvarez and Walter, and generally, that the KPG extinction was caused by the impact of a massive comet or asteroid, 10 to 15 kilometers, 6 to 9 miles wide, 66 million years ago. All right, which devastated the global environment, mainly through a lingering impact winter. Okay, so Luis and Walter Alvarez, along with now people in general, think that it was a comet or asteroid 66 million years ago, which caused an impact winter, which I guess there was an impact and then a winter. And this hypothesis was radical when first proposed, but additional evidence soon emerged. Okay, so this is something which should be a clue here, right? Additional evidence soon emerged. I'm going to get an idea of the evidence that supports that the KPG extinction was caused by the impact of a massive comet or asteroid. All right, let's keep going here. So I've got the first two paragraphs, now third paragraph. The boundary clay is found to be full of minute spherules of rock, crystallized from molten droplets of rock formed by the impact. Provide more evidence. This is getting a little too in the weeds, so I'm not going to pay super close attention to this. I just have, what is some of this additional evidence? Boundary clay and tsunami beds. Okay, cool. Further research identified the giant Chicxulub crater as a source of the KPG boundary clay. Discovery of the crater provided conclusive impact for a KPG impact, strengthened the hypothesis that it caused the extinction. So research identified the Chicxulub crater as the source of the KPG boundary clay, and it provided evidence for an impact and strengthened the hypothesis that it caused the extinction. So this is actually kind of an important thing here. So if you notice here, right, we've got the giant, the crater, okay, is the source of the clay, and it provides evidence for an impact and strengthens that it causes the extinction. So after Walter and Luis, we get this crater, and we've got an impact at the time of KPG, and maybe that it also caused extinction, or probably. All right. In 2016, a scientific drilling project obtained deep core rock samples from the peak ring around the Chicxulub impact crater. Worldwide dispersal of dust and sulfates would have affected climate catastrophically, led to large temperature drops, and devastated the food chain. All right. So in 2016, they did this drilling project. They got their deep core rock samples and presumably found a bunch of stuff, and then concluded that the worldwide dispersal of dust would have affected climate catastrophically. So let's go back and figure out the main point of this whole thing. We have this extinction event. Luis and Walter Alvarez proposed that it's a comet or asteroid that caused an impact winter. Evidence for that is the boundary clay and tsunami beds. And then further research finds a Chicxulub crater, which is the crater for the impact, strengthens the hypothesis that caused the extinction. And then you get further strengthening with this drilling project with deep core rock samples. And then we've got an explanation of the dust and sulfates. All right, so that's enough for our main point. There's a lot of detail in here that I've skipped over, and I don't need to know it unless the question asks me about it. So, main point. I should have enough to answer this. So which of the following most accurately characterizes the passage's main point? By a process of exhaustive discovery, Luis and Walter Alvarez were eventually proven correct in their hypothesis about the KPG extinction. I don't know about the exhaustive part. That seems, exhaustive discovery doesn't seem right. It seems like there's a lot of evidence. And like, we're not sure if they've been proven correct. It's like generally strengthens. So this is correct is too strong word, and exhaustive I'm not sure I really like. So I'm going to cross that out. So too strong, don't like that one. The boundary clay, Chicxulub crater, and deep core samples make it clear that there is a massive crater impact around the time of the KPG extinction event. No, because this isn't really like, so if we look back up here, right, like the whole point is it's a hypothesis and then we get evidence for that hypothesis. And B doesn't sound like there's a hypothesis, and it's not even clear that like the crater caused the extinction or that so this is, it really just doesn't mention the hypothesis, comet or asteroid causing extinction. So I'm going to say no. A variety of evidence strongly supports the hypothesis that the impact of a massive comet or asteroid caused the KPG extinction event. It's actually pretty good, right? We want to support the hypothesis. We can't say it was correct, but saying strongly supports is pretty good. And we do have a variety of evidence. So I like that one. Chicxulub crater confirms that a comet or asteroid caused the Chicxulub extinction event. No, so this only mentions the crater, which is not accurate, right? Because the crater only comes in the last two paragraphs, so we're ignoring the first two paragraphs. It's a pretty common mistake people make, by the way. The main point has to cover the whole passage. It shouldn't just be a single, shouldn't just be the last two paragraphs. And also, again, as we've talked about, confirms it's really strong language. So nope. Luis and Walter Alvarez's hypothesis offers unique insights into the cause of the KPG extinction event. That ignores literally all the evidence we talked about. So the answer must be C. It's too bad C doesn't mention Luis and Walter Alvarez, but what are you going to do? All right. Next up, question 2. The passage's description of KPG boundary clay includes all of the following except that the clay. So this, I remember where they talked about boundary clay. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to boundary clay. So let's look at this boundary clay stuff here. There we go. So we're going to read this. All right. So the boundary clay that was deposited at the time of the impact. Okay, that's what boundary clay means. It's clay that's deposited at the time of the impact, was found to be full of minute spherules of rock, crystallized from droplets of molten rock formed by the impact. Okay, so that's pretty good. That's pretty much boundary clay. Let's see. Yeah, hopefully that'll be enough. Okay, includes all of the following except that the clay is, let's see, thicker around the KPG boundary. Doesn't make sense. I mean, it's KPG boundary clay. So I don't think that makes sense. So if we're doing an except question, I'm going to keep this because I don't think it makes sense that boundary clay would be thicker around KPG boundary. Soon after the Chicxulub impact, yeah, that seems right? Like it was deposited after the time of the impact, yeah. So because it's an except, crossing out, mixed composition, yeah, it's clay plus spherules of rock, so that's mixed. Not just near the Chicxulub crater, but globally. Yeah, that seems right because, it's impact, it vaporizes in the atmosphere. Yeah, and, I don't, let's see. Yeah, KPG boundary became thicker in the southern United States. So if it's thicker in the southern United States, it's located elsewhere. So it's probably located lots of places. So yeah, I'm good with this one. It was dispersed atmospherically before settling. That just makes sense, right? Like the comet goes, whoo, and then there's like a dust cloud, right? So yeah, that one makes sense. All right, so thicker around the KPG boundary. Yeah, I mean, just logically, if it's KPG boundary clay, why would it be thicker around the KPG boundary, right? Like, why? That doesn't really make sense. It is the boundary clay. All right. Number 3. The primary purpose of the third paragraph is to. All right, where do we get primary purpose of the third paragraph? All right, so it's this. And as we talked about, that was like evidence that the hypothesis was right? Because we led into it with this last sentence, which is why we talk about our last sentence, right? It's radical when first proposed, but additional evidence soon emerged. So yeah, so this is evidence for the Alvarez hypothesis. Contrast the Alvarez hypothesis with evidence that existed? No, because it soon emerged. Support the Alvarez hypothesis by recontextualizing existing evidence? No. Support what had been considered a controversial hypothesis? Yeah, it was radical when first proposed, but additional evidence soon emerged. Yep. Identify potential supporting evidence for the Alvarez hypothesis? No, it seems pretty strong thing, and it also doesn't get the sense of soon emerged. Strength the hypothesis that a meteor caused Chicxulub crater? No, that's wrong, and also wrong place because Chicxulub gets mentioned down here, not in the third paragraph. All right. Number 4. Can be inferred from the passage that Luis and Walter Alvarez would most likely agree with which of the following assertions about the KPG extinction event. So remember, we just talked about them in the second paragraph here. And like they just proposed that the KPG extinction was caused by the impact of a massive comet or asteroid 66 million years ago, which devastated the global environment, mainly through a lingering impact winter. All right. So that's Luis and Walter Alvarez think the extinction was caused by a comet or asteroid, which devastated the global environment, mainly through an impact winter. All right. So they would most likely agree with which of the following assertions caused solely by the direct impact of a... See, I don't like this. The solely is very strong, and the direct is also not correct, right? It's the impact winter. So no. It was caused primarily by the secondary effect. Yeah, secondary impact winter, primarily because there's also other things. Yeah, so I'm a fan of that. Unclear what caused it. No, definitely not. Vaporization of granite in the seabed. I didn't see anything about that. That's probably in the last paragraph. Chicxulub Club crater was the source of the extinction event. No, the crater is mentioned way after the Alvarezes, so we don't know what the Alvarezes believe. You know, maybe they have their own thing where they're like, the Chicxulub Club's crater is wrong. No way can it be that one. So yeah. All right. Which of the following statements, if true, would most weaken the conclusion drawn from the scientific drilling project? All right. Let's address this like a logical reasoning question. So first, identifying my conclusion. Okay. So scientific drilling project. Yeah. Obtained deep core rock samples. So this discovery is confirmed. Okay, so the conclusion is like that the impact crater is like the source of like you get the impact and then the impact winter. And let's see, what is our evidence here? So our evidence is that the rock comprising the peak ring shocked by immense pressure and melted in just minutes. Okay, cool. Unlike seafloor deposits, the peak ring was made of granite, which had been ejected to the surface by the impact. All right. Gypsum is usually present in the shallow seabed of the region and been almost entirely vaporized. Okay. The event was immediately followed by a mega tsunami sufficient to lay down the largest known layer of sand separated by grain size directly above the peak ring. All right, so the conclusion is like this crater is like where the impact is, and the impact caused the extinction. And we've got a couple pieces of evidence here, and they're all just like sort of shoved in one after another. So the rock comprising the peak ring had been shocked by immense pressure. That's our first form of evidence. Second evidence is the peak ring was made of granite, and granite had been ejected to the surface. Our third is that gypsum had been vaporized into the atmosphere. Our fourth is this mega tsunami. All right, so we've got the pressure. So we've got the rock with the pressure. We've got the granite ejected. We've got the gypsum vaporized, and we've got the mega tsunami. All right. So if we want to weaken it, we've got to somehow get this thing. Let's see. Granite is found frequently both on the surface as well as deep within the earth. I mean, that's too general. Like if they said specifically on the seafloor or something, because, they do say, oh, the granite, had been ejected to the surface. But I want something that's not frequently just in general. I want frequently on the seabed. So no, mega tsunamis are incredibly rare events. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Mega tsunamis are rare events, but, that doesn't help me here. I know that one happened. When gypsum is vaporized, it leaves behind a telltale radioactive signature that lasts for thousands of years. This radioactive signature was not found at the impact site. So this is tempting, but this is tricky. Thousands of years, right? Thousands of years. So if this had happened thousands of years ago, this would definitely weaken it. But when did this happen? Not thousands of years ago, 66 million years ago. So C is not correct. Time period, really important. Classic LSAT trick. All right. An extinction event, the size of the KPG extinction event is unprecedented in scale. Who cares? I mean, we know it's a big deal. You don't have to tell us twice. And a series of volcanic eruptions around 66 million years ago caused immense amounts of damage to the seafloor globally. Oh, yep, that would definitely weaken it. You know, they have all this stuff that like, oh yeah, there's all this damage to the seafloor that's caused by the impact, and they list out all the damage. But like, what if the damage wasn't caused by the impact? What if the damage was caused by something else happening at the same time? So then probably not the impact anymore. All right, pretty good. So let's keep going here. Which of the following is most strongly supported by the passage? This is one where, as I mentioned, you know, we're just going to have to rely on our knowledge of the passage. There's no keywords in the question. So it is likely that any given animal or plant species that existed before the KPG extinction event no longer exists. Yeah, I mean, it does seem likely. Let's see, how many plant and animal species again? It says it right here. Mass extinction of 3/4 of plant and animal species. So yeah, that seems like likely, right? Like if only 1/4 survived, then yeah, that seems likely. So I think that's actually pretty strongly supported. So if I was pressed for time, I'd just say, hey, check, move on. But I'm not, because I'm doing a video here. So let me do the rest of these. Alvarez's team was unable to estimate the size of the Chicxulub Club crater before it was discovered. Let's look at this. Let's see where do we estimate the size of the Chicxulub Club crater? Chicxulub Club crater. Identified in 1990 based on work by geophysicist Glenn Penfield. Crater is oval. An average diameter of roughly 180 kilometers, about the size calculated by the Alvarez team. So they did estimate the size of it. All right, so that one's wrong, and this one's also wrong. Boundary clay is primarily composed of rock spherules. Does it say primarily? It says boundary clay is full of minute spherules of rock. Primarily is a really strong term there because it is clay. So this one's a maybe, but A seems better, so I'm going to say no. The thickest boundary clay is in northern New Mexico. Did we see something about that? Let's see. Here we go. As did the discovery that the KPG boundary became thicker in the southern United States, meter-thick beds of debris occurring in northern New Mexico. I mean, meter thick is thick, but I don't know if it's the thickest. It just sounds like it's thicker. Thicker is not the same as thickest. So, nope. All right, so A seems like the best here. All right, the passage provides information sufficient to answering which following questions. Again, hopefully we have enough. What was the source of the comet or asteroid that caused the KPG extinction? I don't think we get the source of it. I think it just came from somewhere. So no. What were some of the rock types that are present in the comet or asteroid? Again, I don't remember getting much information about the asteroid. What is the depth of the Chicxulub Club impact crater? Did we get that? Let me check. What is the depth? So we get the diameter of the crater. Yeah, I don't see anything about the depth. So yeah, let's say no there. What was the source of the sulfates that affected the climate after the impact? I think we get that. Sulfates. Okay. Gypsum is a sulfate-containing rock. All right, that was where the sulfates were from. All right, this one looks pretty good. Volume of the comet or asteroid. Again, I just don't think we get much information about that. The author of the passage would be most likely to agree with which one of the following statements. So this is when we have to really think about like the author versus the scientists who are mentioned. They seem to mostly agree on everything. Like I don't get the sense that they're at tension with Luis and Walter Alvarez, and they seem to support their work. So let's just go with something that's like supporting their work. Scientific hypotheses do not need direct evidence to be supported. That seems really strong. Scientific hypothesis predicts something, and then that prediction is confirmed by evidence. That supports the hypothesis. Yeah, that's my classic dumb answer. I mean, everyone agrees with that. I wouldn't need to read the passage to pick that answer. Yep, if it predicts something and then that prediction is confirmed by evidence, that supports the hypothesis. Pretty much everyone would agree with that. I'm sure this guy would agree with that. Every extinction event has one primary cause, super strong language. Global events should have global evidence. I don't even know what that means. It is best to gather evidence for hypothesis as soon as possible after making the hypothesis. Again, that seems really general. Like, what does it is best mean? I mean, if you can't, do you still have to? Like, what if there's a pandemic going on, for example? All right, so I'm crossing that out. So yeah, B, classic dumb answer. All right, last one, number 9. The approach to confirming a scientific hypothesis undertaken by the Alvarez team is most similar to which of the following? Well, so if I think about what the Alvarez team did, right, is they have their hypothesis. They apparently did some calculations because they were able to calculate the size of the impact crater. And then they found evidence, and this is like a lot of evidence, and then at last a drilling project. So it was like hypothesis, calculations, and then evidence. And that was their approach to confirming the hypothesis. So let's see something that's something like that, hypothesis, and then calculations, and then evidence. A political consultant suggests that because an outreach campaign has worked well in the past, it should continue to work well in the future. No. A detective concludes that a certain criminal must have committed the crime after ruling out all other suspects. No. Physician argues that the best cure for a certain ailment is a cure he himself invented. No. Reporter comes across a successive invoice and hypothesizes that it indicates corruption. I mean, that's something, but there's like no evidence there. An entrepreneur calculates proportions for a key ingredient in a competitor's product and looks to confirm this by calling suppliers. Yep, that seems about right. It's you have the hypothesis, you do the calculations, and then you find the evidence. So E seems pretty good. All right, so that is this passage. So again, we did our 4-step process here, right? We skimmed, we went to the questions, we read the passage, we returned to the questions, found the answer choices. If you want a lot more of this, buy my book, gumroad.com/TrevorClee. I got a 175 on my LSAT. Did I mention that? I'm also available for tutoring. I'll also be releasing more videos on the LSAT, reading comprehension, and then also logical reasoning and logic games. So stay tuned for that. I will be posting them on r/LSAT. You can also request access / get a heads up when I post them if you go to my website, which is literally just trevorcleetutor.com. Yeah, that's my website. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this reading comprehension long science passage. Hope you enjoyed. Not to sound like a cliche, but assuming you're watching this on YouTube, please like or subscribe, or let's actually say and subscribe. Yeah, and let me know in the comments what else you'd like to see. I'll probably do a paired passage next. All right, thanks.